So the first thing on the week that was, this was quite an interesting one, really. The most polarizing, I'd say, release in terms of the product space in the last couple of years. Definitely Tesla unveiling its Cybertruck. Now, Barry, what were your first thoughts?
It's a typical Tesla move, and to be honest, I loved it. I loved the whole spectacle. I loved the drama. I loved the polarization. I loved everyone shouting at each other. It was a really, really entertaining release and a really entertaining unveiling. Yeah. I think the Cybertruck is something we've been waiting for Tesla for a while, and everyone was a bit curious as to what they were going to do about it. And to see what Elon and the team did was fantastic.
I mean, there's so many things to talk about here. So, you've kind of split out some of the basic points. So, I mean, let's get started on the first one. I think the elephant in the room. Obviously, this is a big Cybertruck, so elephant being an apt animal to choose here. But let's talk about the design. I mean, this looks like you or my drawing as a kid in terms of very hard lines. Nothing that we would have expected coming out from this manufacturer.
Definitely. It's one of those designs that's got people talking because it's so unique and so bizarre. And as you say, it looks rather rudimentary. And what you can see is that they've definitely seen the fact that in order to make a splash in this new market, they can't have their car look like everyone else, right? And 100%. Pickup trucks in America and across the world look very much the same. Like you can look at the models and they all kind of look the same. They kind of do the same thing. And so they knew they had to make some sort of splash. And so they come out with this thing that looks like it's out of a sci-fi movie / from a 6-year-old's notebook, like a weird mix of the two. And from a design perspective, I can't imagine driving that thing around. I think if you're only listening to this, go and look for a picture online. I can't imagine driving this. I don't know if you can, Chad.
I definitely can't. I mean, unless I picture myself in some sort of sci-fi type movie. But I mean, let's look at sort of interesting design choices in the past. I mean, you're wearing the AirPods, which when they were first released, many a meme was released in that, and now it's mainstream. So potentially we'll see a lot of these things cruising our streets. Certainly when they first started, it's going to be a weird prospect. But yeah, I mean, bold design move, as you said. I think the Ford, one of the Ford, trucks has definitely kind of set the tone for what these things look like these days, and all manufacturers kind of pulling inspiration from that. Whereas on this one, not just in terms of the lines and the sort of main profile of the vehicle, but even some things like the lighting in the front, really interesting choices here, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I mean, what do you think in terms of the AirPods and how those became mainstream? Do you think we're going to adapt to this, polarizing design?
Yeah, I actually read a lot about this because I was trying to understand why they would do something like they did. And there's a lot of communicators and journalists and guys who have been trying to unravel this mystery as to why this design was the final one. Yeah. I think one of the reasons that they did this was because, like in the AirPods case, earphones look the same forever, right? And everyone had the same looking earphones. And if you wanted to signal like the brand strength that Apple has, they decided to go with something that looked a little bit out there, a little bit out of the comfort zone, but something you wouldn't miss if you were walking around, right? If you walk past someone with AirPods right in the beginning, you wouldn't miss them. Yeah. And you would know that they're an Apple fan and an Apple customer. So what Apple did was they leveraged their brand strength to change the way the whole industry looks at something like earphones. And I think Tesla's trying to do the same thing. Yeah. They knew if they put out a pickup truck that looked exactly like the Ford F-150, but just an electric version, you wouldn't even notice as it was driving around. Yeah. This thing you're going to notice. This thing's going to come past your house and you're going to notice it, and you're going to realize that's an electric pickup truck that looks like it's from Blade Runner, and it's going to come past your house, and you're going to know that that person's driving a Tesla. So for the kind of people who are Tesla fans, who are fanatics about this company and really believe in Elon's vision, this is going to be a status symbol, hopefully, that's going to really change the way the pickup market is going. And so I really applaud the decision. It's really rare you see these kinds of out there designs and things that are taking risks. And so whether it's going to work or not, I don't know, but I applaud the ingenuity and kind of the risk taking to be able to say, we're going to put a peg in the sand. We can say, this is what a Tesla semi-truck looks like.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, what's innovation if not that? I mean, if we look at the rest of the design, obviously one of the key things in designing a motor vehicle is the aerodynamics. And I'm not an aeronautical engineer. I certainly should consult one of my mates who is. But I mean, this thing's actually got some impressive specs in terms of the speeds that it can go off of a fully electric motor with this design. In terms of engineering achievements, what do you sort of make of that?
Yeah, so it's typical Tesla again, coming out and putting out specs that are even better than their diesel and their petrol counterparts, right? And if I remember correctly, I think the truck can go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 3 seconds, which is crazy.
Insane.
And so the specs are, as you say, are amazing, and the load strength, the amount it can pull, all of those specs are well ahead of the rest and kind of world class. And you'd expect that from a Tesla vehicle. And so it really shows how technology is pushing forward, and Tesla is really on the cutting edge of that, pushing what can a car do these days, what can a truck do, and utilizing all the engineering chops that are available at Tesla. I mean, I'm thinking about it. If I'm an engineer, I want to be working at Tesla, right? So you can't help but think they must have all the best engineers in the world, you would think. And so obviously, like, this is going to be tip-top, and I'm not a truck person, and I've never even driven a semi-truck, but from the specs that I've seen and the videos that I've seen, it looks incredible. And so I'm really curious to see how it's going to do in the market when it finally gets to production.
Now, I know we're still on the first point, which is the design, but I certainly have to touch it. It's left a lot of questions, this release, with the ATV that they brought onto the back. So there's basically an extending ramp that really just comes from the back of the truck, which is something that I think is incredibly convenient for for anyone who needs to load something up onto the vehicle. But with this ATV inside the truck, it almost looks even more complete. So more questions there. Do you think they're going to release this as a sort of secondary product to this Cybertruck?
I would certainly hope so. It kind of goes in that bucket of their flamethrower and their hats and all the crazy stuff that they've sold over the past. And so I completely agree with you. When that was in the back of the truck, it looked a lot more reasonable. It looked a lot more respectable for some reason. And I've seen a lot of Photoshops, a lot of memes about it since the unveiling of people putting other stuff on the truck. So semi-automatic rifles and crazy stuff in the back. And it just looks better with something in the back. And so I think it's one of those things where I think the ATV is going to be a sideline product, but you never know. It looked super cool, and if you're a Tesla fan, you're obviously going to buy one if it comes out. So you'd think they would put it out for at least in a limited edition.
Definitely. I think, so just the last one on this point, in terms of looking inside the truck, again, something incredibly unconventional. If you have only seen the sort of outside, I definitely advise to kind of go and watch one of the YouTube videos that shows you inside, because it definitely makes you question what we need in a car in terms of buttons, knobs, all of those types of things. Really, all it is a marble-looking type, really like a shelf, upon which there is a obviously steering wheel that comes out and really a electric screen. So again, interesting design choices, but I mean, if we think about it, how many buttons and knobs do we really need inside a cockpit?
And that's the beauty of electric vehicles, right? It's a computer on wheels. That's all it is at the end of the day. And so what you can do inside is open up all of that space. And I'm assuming it feels a lot more spacious, a lot more airy inside a car like that. And again, it comes from Elon's like willingness to look at things from first principles and not just do the status quo, not just copy the rest of the market, but to actually say, like you said, do we need this? Do we need this and this and this and this and this on the dashboard, right? Yeah. And you take that away, and the simplicity of design really comes through. And so they really are pushing the boundaries. And I hope that other car manufacturers are taking heed from this and are building some new cool vehicles that we'll see in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and I mean, a consequence of all of that extra space is that you've got an extra seat in the front. I mean, we've seen trucks in the past have a kind of a half seat. It's really a bit of a squeeze for anyone going in there. But this is a full-sized third seat that sits next to the driver, between the driver and the passenger seat. So, as you say, definitely some benefits from that extra space. Now, I think, again, one of the other elephants in the room, if anyone watched the actual release, there was basically... Why don't you fill us in there, Barry?
It was one of the funniest moments I think I've ever seen in internet history, and the memes that have come out of it have been unbelievable.
Yeah.
So what happened was Tesla unveiled this truck, and they unveiled what they call their armor glass, which is this crazy new form of glass that's going to replace all the windshields and all of that kind of stuff. And in typical like product reveal fashion, they're trying to make it as dramatic and as interesting as possible. So they bring out this guy in this all black leather suit, and they show what happens if you throw a big metal ball at a traditional windscreen or a traditional piece of glass, and the glass shatters and just gets destroyed. Then they pull out the Tesla armor glass, and they take turns dropping this metal ball onto the glass from various heights. So they start from like 2 meters, and it doesn't even dent, doesn't do anything, bounces off. They do it from 5 meters, 10 meters, and then from the top of like a ladder. And it's all very impressive, and it's all great, and everyone's oohing and ahhing, and everyone's writing and tweeting and all that stuff. And then Elon says to the guy, come and throw the ball at the car, with the car on stage behind where he's standing. And so the guy picks up the ball and throws it at the car window, and the whole window just smashes. And you can see Elon just die a little bit inside as that happens, and you hear him say, "Oh God!" And it's one of the most like awkward moments ever, because product demos are like notorious for going wrong. Like you can go and watch compilations of product demos going wrong all around the world all the time. And so to see a Tesla demo where the whole glass just shatters, then he says, "Try the other one," and he tries the other window, and that also shatters. And he has to do the rest of the presentation with the broken windows behind him as the backdrop. It was one of the funniest epic fails I think I've ever seen, and it's been the talk of the town recently. I thought it was very amusing. I don't know what you thought, Chad.
Oh, absolutely. I think you basically painted the perfect picture there in terms of what it actually represented for anyone listening who hasn't seen it. Certainly search it, because it is hilarious. But yeah, I mean, just in terms of what actually happened, I haven't really looked too deeply into it following the actual release. But as you say, I mean, obviously the initial test was pre-set up, so they had kind of measured the distance from the glass, and obviously the sort of acceleration that the metal ball would have come to when it hit the glass and the point of contact, and make sure that it didn't crack. But what do you think happened in terms of the actual vehicle and the actual sort of experiment that they conducted there? Do you think it was just a case of faulty glass, or simply just somebody giving it a bit too much force? What were your takes on that?
It's really hard to say, and from everything I've read afterwards, I don't think even they know at this stage, because I saw another video of Elon and them trying it again after the event, and literally in one of the back rooms throwing the ball as they did on stage, and it was fine. It bounced off like it should have.
Right.
And so I don't think anyone really knows what happened. A lot of the time with these kind of product demos, like, we must remember this thing's only shipping in 2021, right? So this is a prototype.
Yeah.
And so things are going to go wrong. And often if you're coming up to a big launch and you've kind of told the media and everything, you might be pushing deadlines to get this thing ready to be presented on a stage, and it might not be 100% there. So you might find that this prototype vehicle, this prototype glass wasn't 100% there, and maybe they will get to a stage where it is unbreakable glass going forward. But unfortunately, that's what matters on the day when you're in front of all the media, in front of the world, and you don't want something like that to happen.
Sure.
So I don't know why. I don't think they know why, but it was a little bit embarrassing and awkward, and really tested Elon's presentation skills to be able to continue with the whole thing with the broken glass behind him.
Yeah. And I mean, let's touch on that 2021 release. This, for me, feels like quite a long lead time in terms of releasing something, getting the hype up, getting in those pre-orders, and then ultimately having to wait 2 years to actually get their production model vehicle. I'm not a particular motorhead, so I'm not sure if this is normal or not in the industry. To me, it feels like a bit of a test for demand, given the design. What is your take on that? Is this something that is normal, or do you think they are kind of testing the waters a bit?
I think it's something else. I think it's a proactive measure to avoid it leaking from somebody else, right? So I think as the tech world has got more and more in vogue and more people care about it, you see leaks of every major piece of tech way before it gets announced on the actual stage, right? And so these companies are fighting to keep the designs in-house and keep everyone quiet and keep everything quiet so that no one finds out before it's ready. So I think that these product launches are getting earlier and earlier and earlier to try and get ahead of the guys who are going to leak the designs and leak the things, so that they can have the first word on it. So I agree with you. I think the lead time is crazy, and all the pre-orders don't mean much because it's still 2 years away. And also, from a Tesla perspective, 2021 announced by Tesla actually means 2022, 2023, because they've never met any of their deadlines throughout their whole process, right? And so I think it's a measure of avoiding the leaks, and as you say, getting a sense of whether this is actually going to work or not and what kind of demand there is. The problem with trying to use this as a gauge of demand is that you've got these super fans who are going to buy anything you put out.
Sure.
And so you can't look at those super fans as indication of genuine demand in the marketplace. You need to be able to look beyond those super fans to like an average person who doesn't care about Tesla as a company, but does this product really serve a need for that customer? And that is hard to figure out unless you actually have them in production and are getting actual feedback from customers. So that's kind of my take on it. I don't know what you think, Chad.
Yeah, that seems spot on.
Pond across the pond with Barry and Chad.